Well, the first thought that I have is the Roland Quartet is Ponce actually as well, both of them both composers I think were monster pianists. I've heard some actually bad recording quality of a recording of Ponce playing his Concerto Romantico in Mexico City, and just amazing virtuosity. The Roland is a big, big task for the pianist. It's a piece that I would recommend if anyone wants to play it, that you really give yourself a lot of time to learn it and possibly perform it a few times, maybe in informal settings, before you really put it up in a more formal stage kind of environment. The Ponce is a more economical piano part. It's not full of a material like the Roland is, but everything is very much there for a purpose, and both works are quite traditional. One of the things I like about this project, the Ponce project, is that I think there can be a differentiation between works that use a lot of indigenous Mexican sources. For example, if you're talking about composers from Mexico, what we call vernacular, which any great composer from any country is going to do. And then the works that seem to be more traditional and European. And both of these works I would put more in the European category, especially the Roland. The Ponce actually does have some Latin elements to it, especially in the scherzo movement. But they follow your traditional big chamber work structure, both in the trio and in the quartet. So I would link them more in terms of being in line with the great European works. The Ponce Trio and the Roland are both traditional, and they have a four-movement structure. The first movements have a sonata form where you have a repeated exposition, and we have a second movement which is a slow movement. And the third movement is your minuet and trio, which in both cases is a scherzo and trio, and then your big finale at the end. They're a tremendous amount of fun to play. I would say in some ways the Ponce requires a little more concentration with the strings because the pianist is not as busy. So there's a little bit more responsibility there as a chamber musician, collaborator. And the Roland reminds me of some other big European chamber music that I've played where the pianist, it feels basically like you're playing a piano concerto. You're the head front of the stage, and the orchestra's just accompanying you, but I certainly don't want to give any slight to the string parts because they're fantastic as well. Well, they're both phenomenal works. I would say that they are much more in line with European chamber music than they are representative of traditional Latin American music. Some of the programs that I've played works of Ponce are clearly influenced by Mexican song, what they call the Mexican canción. And the trio by Ponce has, as Omar has actually mentioned, it has some of these Latin elements, but they're much more subtle than you would find in some of his other works. Ponce wrote quite a bit of solo piano music, and a lot of it sounds very much like in the line of Latin American tunes that have been set to the piano. The Roland is, I don't like to compare with other composers because I'm not a composer myself, and so I don't want to disrespect the composer. But the level of difficulty and the inharmonic writing, the chromaticism, and the density of the writing in the Roland Quartet reminds me of when I was working on the Richard Strauss violin sonata, where the pianist really just does not have a moment to rest, and yet has to find a way to shape the phrases and follow the string part, follow the violinist, in this case following the violinist, the violist, and the cellist. And so what's necessary in an experience like that with a big work is to play it many, many times, and after a performance to go back and revisit the score and really look at all of the different, it'd be like a basketball game where you go back and you look at different plays that were done and you analyze them in retrospect, which is, hindsight is 20/20. So that's what I would say with the Roland.